Good evening. This is Jude Villavaso on today's Sober, Safer Streets podcast. This evening, we'll be discussing drinking and driving and its effect on society. Today's guest is Dr. Jennifer Avegno, the New Orleans Health Director. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Please tell us about how long you've been an emergency department physician and when you were appointed the New Orleans Director of Health.
Well, I am born and raised in New Orleans. I went to med school here at LSU, and I finished my training in 2005, right before Katrina hit. So I've been practicing emergency medicine for almost 20 years, and the entire time I've been at our only level 1 trauma center. Used to be Charity Hospital. Now it's University Medical Center downtown. And then I took the job as the health director in 2018. So I've been doing that for a little over 6 years.
Okay. And you say you've been working 20 years in the emergency department. Could you share some examples of the challenges you faced while treating victims of drunk driving related accidents?
Well, unfortunately, those are all too common. As the city's only level 1 trauma center, we get accidents from all over the state. So not just in New Orleans, we get people flown from, many, many miles away. And over my career, I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of victims of drunk driving. They are often very, very severely injured, whether they were the impaired driver or even more tragically, we see whole carloads of people affected by a drunk driver, families that were just driving to church or to an event whose lives are completely changed. Individuals who drive drunk really are not aware of their surroundings. They lose their inhibitions, meaning that they drive erratically, they drive fast, they don't see things in front of them. And so they often drive with a really great deal of speed. And when a car at a high rate of speed hits a person or another car, it can cause catastrophic injuries. So, although drunk driving rates have gotten better over the years, slightly, it's still a huge problem in Louisiana.
Right. And because I was going to ask you about how alcohol impairs somebody's ability to drive, but like you told us,
well, just to be a little, I can expound on a little more. Alcohol is a depressant. What that means is that it slows down the connections in your brain, right? So you're not, it's harder to process things. It's harder to react to things. It's harder to take in information around you. And if you drive, as I assume many of you do, you know that you really have to be sharp and have your wits about you, because you need to see that ball that bounces into the street, or the light that's about to turn red, or the tree branch that's coming too low, or the grandma crossing the street, right? And you've got to really be awake and alert the whole time. And so even a small amount of alcohol, particularly for a teenagers' brains are very susceptible to alcohol and their effects. So even a tiny amount can really throw off your judgment, and that split second can make the difference between life and death.
Right. And in Louisiana, 31% of motor vehicle related accidents are because of alcohol impaired driving. And that's resulted in 261 fatalities in 2022. Do you have any thoughts as to how we as a community can work to decrease those numbers?
Yeah, I think over the years, since I was a teenager, we've actually done a pretty good job. When I was a teenager, we were just at the beginning of communications campaigns, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, where, we were shown the effects. But I remember as a teenager not really being all that aware, paying attention, and the cars weren't particularly safe. We didn't have to wear seatbelts back then, right? Now we do. The penalties for drunk driving are a lot more severe, but really it's the knowledge. So, I have teenagers, and as they progress through high school, they have really easy and open conversations with their friends about who's going to be the designated driver, because it's been so ingrained in them. So I think that we all as a community have to make sure we continue that conversation and that we're talking to our kids.
And 31% of motor vehicle crashes in Louisiana were alcohol related, and 261 fatalities could be attributed to those. Do you have any thoughts to how we as a community can work to decrease those numbers?
Yes, definitely. I think we have, since I was a teenager, 30-ish years ago, because when I was growing up, we didn't really talk that much about the dangers of drunk driving. We didn't really have the kind of communication campaigns. It wasn't socially accepted, right? People didn't want to look weak, right? They thought, oh, I can handle it. But now with my own teenagers, because we've had really great national campaigns, they have conversations. They talk about who's going to be the designated driver and they stick to it. And it's not a big deal. They don't get ostracized or made fun of. So continuing to have the conversations as parents, we have to talk to our kids about alcohol. We can't just assume that they'll figure it out or they'll be safe. So we have to continue to do that. I think kids need to continue to talk to each other and to speak up and to say, hey, we went to this party. I just saw you have a beer. I really don't want you to drive. Let's figure out another way. We have really successful programs in town. I think St. Aug is one of the places that does sudden impact, where you come to the hospital and you really see the effects of injuries on people. I think that hits home. And I think there's a lot of ways we can make laws that have stiff penalties for drunk driving, or make it harder to get alcohol if you're underage and maybe aren't making the best decisions. But it's going to take continued focus because, as you said, more than 200 deaths a year is 200 too many.
Right. Dr. Avegno, you've given us a wealth of information. And before we conclude, please leave our listeners with some advice regarding drunk driving.
Just speak up. When you see somebody about to put themselves in a dangerous situation, understand that that might be the last time you see them if you don't have that courage to say, let me take your keys. Let's call an Uber. Let's get you another way home. I have seen families devastated by drunk driver. My own husband lost his uncle when he was a child to a drunk driver, and that transformed their family forever. And we certainly don't want that to happen to any of our loved ones. So don't be afraid to speak up and have real conversations.
Thank you, Dr. Avegno. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in to today's podcast episode for the Sober, Safer Streets.